Cardinals getting involved in the market that you've wanted them to be in.
I've told you, shortstop.
Getting them close to where it's at. So I'm going to tell you, here's what I'm prepared to do today. I'm prepared to throw out any context of the jaded outlook that I can have from how the Cardinals have managed free agency in the past.
Thank you.
Where very clear options are on the table that can make the team better, and they just say, yeah, we'll stay the path. It seems like maybe they're doing the thing that gets people excited and going after some of the things that can have an immediate day one impact. And I think that would definitely be either DANSBY SWANSON or Xander Bogaerts. So I'm here for it. Let's talk about it.
Well, I think that the Cardinals, of course, are always going to rely on their player development as the bedrock of what makes their franchise as winning as it has been. Like, they've had, I think, one losing season in the 2000s, which is pretty ridiculous. And I think it was 2008, if I'm not mistaken.
Did they?
I
thought it had been longer than that, but maybe there were some years in there that were better off not remembered, so let's go with that one.
But they've been largely, really, most franchises try to model themselves after what the Cardinals do. And most of that comes from building from within.
But it comes with the double-edged sword, though, that can sometimes peeve people, though, right? Where they always compete. But some people are like, they're not going for it by just competing. Are you going for it constantly, or are you trying to just compete and be successful? Me, I'm of the opinion that based off what they do with the funds that they have and the level of the teams that they compete with, that very many other teams that have the level of income that they have, or even in the media markets that they're in, no way. It wouldn't happen. It just could not happen. Look at the Angels. They have nowhere near the consistency that the Cardinals have or the success, but the Cardinals pull it off, and that's because, they can be a bit conservative with what they go after and who they go after. But that being said, like the point that was just made right there are some pretty clear options here. Like, let's not think about December. Let's think about the end of the season. Let's think about how the year ended and what you knew you had to do to get better. And I think we talked about it, and you said there is a tier of teams that are operating with an aggressiveness that is just separated from the rest of the National League. And the Cardinals have been just underneath that. And that's why you saw them go home to a team that has spent the money, has gone after the guys, have gone and done all those things in the Phillies and struck again yesterday. So where does that influence the Cardinals of saying that there's a very clear class that, yes, we can compete with our peers in the Central, but we got to compete outside of it now, too.
No, and I think it's becoming clearer and clearer when you have teams like the Phillies and the Dodgers spending like how they have been spending.
Mm-hmm.
That opens eyes around Major League Baseball, and I think it opens eyes for fan bases going, why can that organization afford $200-300 million players, and we can't even re-sign, a average left-hander for a 2-year deal worth like 15, and I'm talking about Jose Quintana, of course.
Yeah.
Without being sitting there going, oh, it could really shake the financial structure of the DeWitts. No, I think we need to get past that. St. Louis needs to I think fans are already pretty much there. They've got to get into the same boat as the rest of these teams because they're a distant 12th. I think they were 12th overall, but if you look at the top 8 teams at what they were spending payroll-wise, Cardinals are way behind. And they've acknowledged that they're going to take that up to about 180, 185.
Well, and the thing that when you look at that, I always say, because I've had plenty of people bring that up to me and stake it, and I think it's a point to a certain extent. Because when you look at where the team was at 5 years ago, and you look at where it's at now, there's big investments on the corner infield. They went out and got guys that were the wildest dreams when you were dealing with some of the things you were dealing with there, when the team was trying to get itself through the Stephen Piscotty era and the Randall Grichuks of the world and all of those type of things. They went out and they made those investments. They traded the prospects. That was what the call was before, was you never trade prospects. You hoard them. You never do it. Well, they did it. And you can see how that can work out sometimes when you do that. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you don't. The other thing was saying that the Cardinals don't pay. They don't put up big money for guys unless they have been there forever and they're doing their thing, like people like Yachty, people like Wainwright, and things like that. They did that. Going out and participating in the free agent market at a reasonable level is the last step in the process. And it's not so much about just saying that you'll spend money on guys that you've traded for and you've brought in. Sometimes you got to go out and get them without going into your prospect cachet or trading people from your roster. Sometimes you just got to do a straight-out ad. Mm-hmm. And I think the Dexter Fowler deal still stands as the biggest free agent deal, outright free agent deal, not a re-signing, not anything else that the Cardinals have done. And that was, 5 years and $55 million?
66?
Was it 66? I thought he said maybe. But either way, when you look at that pales in comparison, even to some of the contracts that teams that are maybe not the Yankees and maybe not the Mets or the Dodgers or whatever are giving out to people. You still got to take that shot.
But how long ago was the Fowler contract? I mean, that's going back like 16, 17.
Yeah, 2017, I think.
And these owners, they just got another big payday from selling the baseball media rights off. So, and the Players Union's been very transparent about saying, look, we're going to see how much of this money that you guys just made off of essentially our highlights and how much does that trickle back into the Players Union instead of back into your pockets, which it's not going to be 100%. This was the ongoing debate. This is why we had a lockout last season of what the owners are making compared to what they're spending on
lockout
players.
That I still feel like the players didn't get enough out of.
Well, they didn't, but I don't think the owners were going to budge.
Yeah.
And so, the players got some.
At some point, you had to. Baseball couldn't afford a strike, first of all. This has been the worst time ever for the baseball to not play. So I'm glad they worked something out. But now you've got to go in good faith, almost hoping that that leadership is going to go do it. And to their credit, big money got spent yesterday as free agency got underway. Big money, and there's a lot more to come. But you just hope here in St. Louis, where you're perennially contending. You got the flags. You know how many titles you got. You're the most, established National League team of all time. The expectation now, though, is for you to continue to evolve the team into the modern landscape and go out there and compete in December, too.
But don't you think that the Cardinals have been relying on, like, this lineup, which at times has been robust and seems deep, and you look at it and you got some nice versatile pieces. And then when you get into games against teams that are playoff caliber, you go, oh, wow, this roster's pretty young. This lineup has some holes in it. They've got guys that don't know how to go up there and take some really quality at-bats in crucial moments. And if you can bring in some veterans and a guy like Dansby Swanson, that's not saying that Tommy Edman can't ever play shortstop. I'm just telling you that he's an all-star second baseman, and you could pair him with an all-star shortstop, and the Cardinals haven't had a true shortstop going back 5 years.
It's almost like life's pretty easy when you're playing the Pirates, the Reds, and the Cubs for the majority of your schedule, isn't it?
Yeah, let's get more of those games on the schedule.
But
don't you want to see...
We're down to 6 each now, so you got to figure out a way to see everybody else.
Go back to 2011. If you want to just watch one of the greatest at-bats of all time, watch Lance Berkman in Game 7 Game 6 against the Rangers when the Cardinals are coming back. And Berkman's down to his last strike, and he's taking pitches that are just barely off the plate. Like, go watch that, and then remind yourself of how crucial it is to have veteran players in your lineup when it comes to crunch time against really good teams.
Yeah, and that was that was a year where the Cardinals were already a pretty veteran-laden team. They had high-end veterans, and obviously in Albert Pujols, you had a Matt Holliday on that team. You had guys that Lance Berkman, obviously, but then you strategically used the youth and the younger guys that were coming along. Your Alan Craigs, your David Freeses, those type. Yachty being part of that veteran base as well. John Jay, just the list goes on and on and on. The Cardinals are in a unique position right now where they could be that type of team again. They're not all that far away from being able to put that similar type of team together. You've got your pieces that are entrenched into your lineup. You've got your Arenados and your Goldschmidt, 2 top 3 MVP guys. You've got, the opportunity to Tommy Edman. And, really, that's a guy that's starting to get to that point where he's pretty firm in as becoming a veteran guy in the league. His name's out there. He's really, making an impact at his position. You still have a lot of room to make up in the outfield. I think that's where you're really looking at a lot of your youth and trying to do it. But to your point, and then I want to talk about some of the ways to go about this again. Adding a veteran 1, a luxury would be 2, into the lineup this year. I think that is the rocket on the back of the potential of this team and a potential. Time's a ticking. You only got so many more years of what Goldschmidt's going to be. You've only got so many more years of Arenado. Arenado made the commitment to be here, be a part of it, and do it. You got to make good on that. You have to. But they've also shown the ability to do that in the past. When Roland came to town, you had Edmonds already. Pujols grew up. You had that. They did what they needed to do to put the pieces around that team to go and win. You had a lull there. You did the same thing when you went out and got Holliday, spent money on him and did that. it's time to do that again because you're right there teetering, but you know you got championship level ability on the team. But you got to invest in getting over the last step.
And I don't want another situation where you're in June like you were last season or I guess it was May, and you felt like, wow, we have to call up Nolan Gorman. We have to call up Nolan Gorman. Well, why did you have to call up Nolan Gorman? Because you had so many other young guys that were inconsistent, and you needed a bat in there to try to stabilize it. And he came up, he did some nice things, and then he tailed off, and then he got hot again, this, that, and the other. And then when it was all said and done, I mean, you couldn't even really find a spot for Nolan Gorman in the playoffs. But
yeah,
two games.
It was almost like the symptom was the cure. We need Nolan Gorman to come fix all these young guys that can't figure it out at the major league level.
But I think Nolan Gorman can be a damn good player, but I don't want to see that exact same thing happen to Jordan Walker this year, where you don't have enough guys to feel comfortable about the veteran situation, so you got to go pluck your top prospect to save the day.
You've got to
be Mason Wynn after that.
You've got an ability to make sure that doesn't happen to the next guy. One thing I believe is that if you've got a top prospect and you want to get him at bats, you got to leave room for him to take them. Last year, because of the way that the injury situation went and things played out, Nolan Gorman was needed. That's different than creating a space for him to be able to get regular at bats, to be able to go through it and be able to have that experience. Nolan Gorman, ready or not, you can kind of decide how that's going to be. I mean, I think a guy who's got the swing and miss rate that he's got, but it's a big power upside guy, is always going to have a little bit rougher getting out the gate. But if, let's use Jordan Walker, for example, and use it in the big picture of the decisions you're making in the offseason. If you come up and you say is that, hey, I want Jordan Walker to be in the mix for right field, left field, wherever you want to play him at. I want him to be in that mix from day one. I want to build my DH space around being able to find an opportunity for him and Gorman to go and be a part of that and get regular at-bats. Cool. Let that shape the plan of what you've got this offseason. So don't go add another corner outfielder that's going to block him from getting at bats. Because if that's the case, just leave him in Memphis. Mm-hmm. I think that the space you make for your young players needs to be a complement to what you do right now. So you go out and you get somebody. I think Ivan Herrera is a guy who gets lost in the mix right now because you know you've got to get better at catcher. But my thing about it is that even if you he doesn't have room to get the exposure to be good at the major league level.
So when he wasn't ready.
Well, no, he wasn't ready, but I'm talking about this year going forward.
Yeah.
Those days sitting on the major league bench aren't getting you any closer to being ready to play in the game either.
Right.
So that's the thing I'm saying is that if Jordan Walker is going to be a part of your plan for him better than what happened with Nolan Gorman.
Mm-hmm. Herrera's still pretty young.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just look at it right here. He is 22.
Yeah.
So
first of all, by no way, shape, or form am I saying that if you go out and acquire a catcher that it means the end of days for Ivan Herrera.
No. If anything, it actually probably aids his development.
Absolutely. It gives him time to be able to get where he's got. And one thing I'll also say is that the Cardinals are sneaky deep at catcher in their system right now, too. So there's a lot of options. You're not right back at an immediate Carson Kelly, situation where it just says, hey, you got to get rid of the guy. It doesn't make sense to hold on to him. It's not just about your 26, 27 best guys. If you really, really have an organization, you've got things. Because if the Cardinals just said it's about your top 25, top 27 last year, you wouldn't have been able to call on Juan Yepes. You wouldn't have been able to call on Nolan Gorman. You wouldn't have been able to call on Brendan Donovan, although he absolutely exceeded expectations to a level nobody saw coming. But you wouldn't be able to call on Burleson and all these guys that came up and literally, in my mind, were the reason why the Cardinals could compete last year because their young guys came up and were ready to be in the mix.
They had a huge, huge part in the mid portion of the Cardinals season.
Oh, my God.
But then, again, when you get into these crunch games and these big playoff time atmospheres, you got to be able to control your emotions and put together a plate appearance that is a lot better than what we've seen. And frankly, that goes for everybody. Like Goldschmidt had some of the worst plate appearances of any Cardinal. And what am I talking about? He's the biggest veteran on the team.
It's one of four. There were four. Real quick, I'll just say this because I think it partners on that. The Cardinals had 4 seasons in one last year. You had the season that you broke camp with. The team that you thought you were going to have. That didn't last all that long. Injuries set in and did that. The second stage was the young guys stepping up and carrying the weight and doing that. And we knew. We sat right here and said that this has got a shelf life. This is only going to last for so long. And that came to be true. It had the middle part of the season after the All-Star break where Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado synced up and just went absolutely nuts together. And then it had the last month in the playoffs where nothing was quite clicking. Albert Pujols carried weight in that third stage, too.
And I was going to say
100%.
the additions of Quintana and Montgomery were crucial, too.
Yeah,
they go
I'm just thinking.
14-1
I'm just thinking about lineup.
Basically.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about the lineup with the season, about how they produced every day. And then you got to the end of September, and all right, you're kind of getting a little bit of the worst of all of these elements. And that plays into the part about where I'm saying is that right now, going out and getting guys, if you add a Dansby Swanson or a Xander Bogaerts or a Wilson Contreras or anybody in that space, I find it a lot harder to believe that all of those guys are going to go cold at once. And that's how the Phillies got over. They just had enough guys to be able to keep going and to be able to keep pushing. So this is the part of the year where maybe you're adding names, but that name is also performance depth too.
Gary in Wildwood, why is no one talking about Bogaerts? Longer track record of hitting. Swanson has had one good year, for God's sake.
Well, let's talk about Xander Bogaerts.
Two.
Let's talk about Xander
Yes,
Bogaerts.
too.
I like Xander Bogaerts a lot.
Yeah.
I like him a whole lot. I think that there's a lot of things that he does that if I sit there and I say, one thing that's big to me is that the Cardinals add more middle of the rotation muscle. Like Dansby Swanson, if he came here, I'd say, you hit that guy too. Move him up, let him be a table setter and be a bat in front of your guys. But I see as much need to be able to put something behind Arenado too. Because right now the lineup, the way it's developed, falls off a cliff.
Dude, this guy drove in 96 runs.
Which one are you talking about, Bogaerts?
Dansby.
Dansby's, yeah, that's cool. Different kind of hitter than Bogaerts, though. He definitely can drive in runs. He can get and do it. Bogaerts is more of that, I guess, classic gap-to-gap type guy. And I do agree with that the track record of Bogaerts hitting has been among the absolute best offensive shortstops in baseball. And he's also a guy that's not bad with the glove. I don't see either one of these guys as being a consolation prize to the other one. They're both the gift. They're both they're both would do exponentially better things in this lineup on a day-to-day basis than what you got.
But I think we agree Bogaerts is a better player overall.
I think over Bogaerts, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Or are we saying?
I'm saying Bogaerts.
I think Swanson is a great fit. I think Bogaerts is the better player
Me
overall.
too.
I also think that Bogaerts is going to get paid like the better player.
So do
overall.
I. And if we're learning today that Trey Turner left $41 million on the table to sign with the Phillies as opposed to the Padres, then that doesn't necessarily mean like Bogaerts could still get very close to 300.
Bogaerts has got a huge market too because he's also said, "I'll play third, I'll play second. I don't care."
Well, long
he
term,
said, "I
doesn't
want to get paid."
He came up. Bogaerts came up third baseman because remember he was a rookie in 2013 when the Cardinals played the Red Sox in the World Series.
Who's playing shortstop for the Red Sox then though? I think he moved over out of like temporary necessity.
I thought he was at third base when Alan Craig got hung up with him.
Has
thought
Bogaerts been in the league that long?
Yes.
I thought it was Will Middlebrooks at third for them.
Yeah. Well, wait. I don't know. We gotta look that up. Can we? If we can
Yeah,
effort
we can
that,
look
that'll be
that
good.
up. I got you.
But the thing that I think about it is that Bogaerts has said he's willing to go play a lot of different places. I'll throw some. This is what I hope.
Bogaerts since 13, by the way.
I hope that was his. He was a young rookie though.
Yeah,
he was
but
a really
played
young
in
rookie.
World Series.
So the thing that I really hope happens is that number one, the Chicago Cubs just come in and just pay a ton of money to somebody who doesn't make them any better in the immediate sense. And I hope that that's Carlos Correa. I hope that they go out and they spend on Carlos Correa. I think Carlos Correa ends up in Chicago or L.A. or somewhere there. The Dodgers are going to spend money. I mean, it's just going to happen eventually. Eventually, the Dodgers are going to get somebody that you didn't see coming.
Yep.
And I think Correa actually would fit
be
in
a
there.
fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I also really hope that the Cubs spend money on just one big guy for whatever reason. There's so many issues with that roster. So to see their name coming up so frequently for these big free agents, I'm like, what do these guys want there outside of the check?
Not to mention, they already have a pretty darn good shortstop in Nico Horner.
Yeah,
now,
and it
I
seems
guess they
to
could
be-
say the same thing about St. Louis. Like, well, they got a pretty good shortstop in Tommy Edman.
Yeah. I mean, like Mo said about him. You know, I don't think the Cardinals are going to crap out if they don't land one of these guys, but I certainly think it would help for the Cubs to just spend money crazy on somebody, and then it opens up the space for you to swoop in and get one. But
Yeah.
I don't think Correa's here.
They've
So,
talked
I hope it's
actually
him.
about potentially two, like adding two names out of that group, whether it's a Bogaerts and a Swanson.
Yeah. I cool. Do that. If you're the Cubs, fine, do that. They've got so many issues that it's not getting solved overnight.
I don't think it's getting solved overnight, but I don't think the Cubs are as bad as some of the other teams that the Cardinals saw last year, whether that's the Pirates or the Reds or some of these other bottom feeders. Like the Cubs at least had some fight
They did. They had some fight, but the thing I look at the Cubs, I look at the pitching. It's further behind than a lot of those other teams too. I mean, I think there's still 3 teams in the Central that are just adrift at sea basically. But who knows? I mean, but sometimes you got to let the market come to you, and sometimes somebody else's decision is going to figure it out. And I just hope Correa is the one that goes there, because that doesn't sound like somebody the Cardinals are in play for. So why not have them eliminate and take a suitor off the table?
Let's see here. Another text. Swanson, this is Daddy Padre. Swanson reminds me of Fowler, Cecil, Leak, and Matz. Is he good? Sure, but also careered it in his hometown where he is comfortable. I wouldn't want to pay above average for when Correa and Bogaerts are much better.
I mean, playing at home isn't always the most comfortable thing to do. I mean, he got traded there from the Diamondbacks shortly after, being the number 1 pick in the draft. And I mean, in his come along there, it hasn't been the easiest run for him.
I just don't think you can have, like this PTSD from poor free agent signings in the past.
I don't think that
Move on.
I don't think that the Cardinals front office does either. In all defense,
You don't?
No.
I think they actually kind of do.
I don't think they do, because if they did, you wouldn't have seen them make another trade for a Goldschmidt or a Arenado after the failure of the Ozuna deal. Like
Trades, though, I think Mo just historically has one trade.
It's his preferred way to do business too. It's his preferred way to do business. I think that the Cardinals, as an organization, prefer to trade and get a chance to know who the person they've got is before they commit to him. And that's fine, but you can't always do that. And I think you're in a situation now where you definitely can't.
And I think they're in a situation where they've always had 3, right? Even going back to the Roland Edmonds and Pujols phase.
Mm-hmm.
They have not really had the 3. They've been looking for that 3rd. No one's really emerged.
Well,
they've had glimpses of it, whether,
And I think that some of that also goes to the fact that, right now, the Cardinals really haven't had that person emerge from their system and become that next level star in a while. I mean, they produce a lot of quality players. Some of them go to other places and are really good. I mean, the Alcantara Gallon, they went and did it. That's the price that you pay. That's the price that you pay to try to add people to the team that they need, though. So I don't believe I'm not against those trades, because they wouldn't have made that trade 10 years ago. Like, they were just sat there.
Quintana did everything you could ask for, pitching great in a playoff game, and you couldn't sign him. What? That's from 314. I don't know if that's off the table.
No.
I don't either. In fact, I think it's still probably pretty.
I think that's their 3rd tier focus. I think it might actually be their 2nd focus, honestly.
I think they're so focused on. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'd probably say that's fair. Catcher's by far number 1.
A catcher in some form is number 1. I know we had to do break in a second. We can talk about that because some new info came out around what that would cost. Catcher is it. I hope nobody argues with that. After that, it seems to be, Quintana, honestly. He's the only name I've heard that there's been. This is the guy that they look at going after that. And then you start to get into some of these. Is this hot stove talk? Is this real? Is it a thing? Is it a shortstop? Is it a frontline pitcher? Is it a bull? You start to get a little murkier there.
Well, the pitching market probably needs to thin out a little bit before teams start.
The guys that signed early.
Quintana 4 or 5 year deal,
Well, the guys that signed early in the pitching market, boy, they might have played themselves. Guys like Tyler Anderson did 3 years, 39, and then you see a guy that pitched 75 less innings than him get $40 million out of the Rays. Like, man, let these big deals happen. The Verlanders, the DeGrom, all that's over with. But you got a little time to still get to Quintana.
All right, last thing before we get to timeout. Cody Bellinger, classic low-hanging fruit. Mo potential signing a la Berkman or Beltran, working out with Holiday now. Yeah, he's been working out with Matt Holiday down at Oklahoma State. Look, I'm high on Bellinger. He's 2.5 years removed from an MVP season. I know other people aren't as high on Bellinger, but for a 1 year, low risk, high ceiling move, I think it would make sense. And it's something that's worked out for the Cardinals in the past.
My thing is, if you can make that move after you address some of these other things, I'm cool with it, but it wouldn't be my strike first move.
Yeah.
I got the answer, by the way.
What's the answer?
So Will Middlebrooks was actually on the bench for the majority of the World Series. Xander Bogaerts played 3rd. Stephen Drew played short.
Stephen Drew. There it is.
So it was Bogaerts, though, at third base, right?
Yeah.
That got tangled up with Allen?
Yeah, and he played basically just a month of baseball beforehand, and he was already in the World Series lineup.
Yeah.
So
and he was their number 1 guy, too.
Pretty quick work.
Okay, boys. So soon enough, you'll stop, questioning me when I say something.
After they traded Yohan Moncada as part of the Chris Sale situation, Bogaerts was the guy that stepped up and then went into that space.
It is wild because you still think Bogaerts' pretty young guy, but he's playing.
What's he, 20?
13,
28, 29?
I think they're all, that whole group was pretty much turning 28 or 29.
Xander Bogaerts is already 30.
30.
Okay.
So.
But his stats are better than Dansby Swanson.
Oh,
he's a better
visibly
player.
So. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that Bogaerts is a lock top 5 shortstop in baseball.
But Bogaerts could be probably more suited to play at a different position sooner than Swanson, just by my own eyes.
You mean like he's got to move off the Keystone sooner?
Yes.
I mean, he's been, if you look at their defensive metrics, they're pretty close.
Are they?
Yeah, I mean, that's another guy that's been a Gold Glove regular up there, and you look around. I mean, Swanson is. I mean, so I'm sorry, Bogaerts can go get it. I mean, it's. I would say he probably compares more favorably to like how DeYoung in the field. Honestly,
I just don't. I think it's
Not at the
unfair to
plate,
suggest that if the Cardinals signed Swanson, you'd be looking at a bust like a Dexter Fowler. I just think that's outrageous.
No, I don't think that's going to be the case at all.